Protect your DNA. BioPQQ can promote formation of new mitochondria. Infowarsstore.com.
And we can only realize the promise of this institution's founding to replace the ravages of war with cooperation if powerful nations, like my own, accept constraints.
We've got an exclusive at Infowars.com. Leaked video shows Obama railing against white people during his very first trip to Kenya in his 20s. Margaret Howell joins me now. And from what we are able to see in the footage so far, not a lot has changed in Obama's worldview since he was a young man in his 20s. Now, this footage is set to be released very soon. It's going to be released through the site WeSearcher, which is going to be crowdfunding the cost of releasing this video. They have to pay the private eye who was able to obtain the footage. Now, WeSearcher's Chuck Johnson exclusively revealed to Infowars some of Obama's comments in the video. He says at one point he talks about being deeply saddened by a sense that whites are still superior in this country, going on to talk about basically just white privilege. And you can see how his psychology and his worldview hasn't really changed that much. Now, like I said, this footage is going to be released exclusively to Infowars.com as soon as they're able to raise the costs to pay the private eye who has acquired this footage. But Margaret, it's pretty telling. We can see the way that his presidency, a lot of people have said, and this is just going to be further ammunition for them, that he really ran his presidency on racial division in this country.
Of course he did. You know, his smug disdain and his arrogance for all things that are fake and phony, Leanna. The race division is just a part of his playbook. You know, I sincerely believe he hates this country, and you know, for whatever reason, you know, he was allowed to have a certain amount of power at a certain time. And I was listening to Alex's show yesterday. Let's just hope that Hillary isn't our judgment. But going back to his disdain for our country, he was at the UN, of course, we know, and 3 days after terrorism attacks on our own soil, U.S. soil, this is what he had to say: the world is safer today. And then he goes on to criticize our country and bash it 11 separate times in his speech. He talks about basically how we're lazy, America's excess of capitalism is part of the world's problems. And he goes on to praise the UN. You'd think he were leader and head of, you know, president of the United Nations and not the U.S.
Right.
He clearly despises this country, and he's concerned, and what he's saying is we need a change of course. Well, buddy, you need a change of course. Thank God your time is limited.
Well, he's already said that about America, and we see what's happened. That he campaigned on the fundamental change.
Oh, the arrogance.
Fundamental change, and we see how that went.
But bashing us 11 times, and then he goes on to say, and I love, this was my favorite quote from him: we must reject any form of fundamentalism, except for yours. Any form of fundamentalism or racism or any belief in ethnic superiority that makes our traditional identities irreconcilable. And then he goes on to talk about the truism that globalism has led to a collision of cultures. I would say that the collision of cultures is between the archaic and the civilized, and he's trying to paint it in this fake race way. Guess what? You lost the word war here, buddy, and it's time to hang it up. But unfortunately, we see past him. It's easy to poke holes, but as you pointed out, he has never changed this stance.
Right.
Not once.
It's a lot like Hillary Clinton, who was radicalized in her youth, and to this day, she still fundamentally wants to change this country. She does not like America, this idea of America, this big experiment that was America, and they both want to take it down. Why? Why are we electing these people? Why on earth would we elect another person who hates this country so much?
Right. Well, the apologists got in line with the people that actually hate the country, and they were able to do it. But look, the UN, the refugee agenda, it is gunning for America. Make no mistake about it. We are in an all-out war, and they're framing this argument with words like racism and bigotry. But the truth is that they're gunning for you and I, and it's an agenda to take us down. And I love it. So Hillary Clinton's comments regarding Donald Trump, he's saying that he's recruiting the terrorists because of his insane statements. Meanwhile, the terrorist, like Rahami, is totally anti-Trump.
Right.
You know, it does wrap your head around
the
that.
Orlando shooter is behind Hillary Clinton and smiling and like, yay, Hillary, I love your message so much. It's just for me. And of course, now we have Senator Jeff Sessions really going off on Obama, saying once again he picks the United Nations over America.
Oh, of course he does.
There is a statutorily required hearing that was supposed to take place this week on the immigration refugee admissions program in fiscal year 2017. But of course, this Senate hearing has now had to be postponed because he wants to huddle in New York with the United Nations refugee proponents. And so he's saying, once again, you're choosing the UN agenda over the American agenda. And one of the things that the president said while he was there, he said, if we're honest, we understand that no external power is going to be able to force different religious communities or ethnic communities to coexist for long. And so we need to pursue the hard work of diplomacy aimed to stop this violence and help people that are basically able to see that those who are not like themselves as worthy of dignity and respect. So he admits there's no way we can make this work. They're not going to be able to coexist. So we need to help the people who are willing to, not throw people off buildings that aren't like them. Meanwhile, there's a refugee on trial for drowning 6 Christians who failed the faith test. So this was someone who was bringing a lot of refugees over on a boat, and these Christians, they were praying, and there was a heavy storm wave started, and it was rocking the boat, and he blamed it on them praying, so he throws them all off in the water to die. But it's not even just that. Even in Saudi Arabia with the House of Saud, they're actually coming after their own Muslims, basically making them have to, they're profiling anyone who wants to come and take this annual, this required trip, Hajj. And so all Muslims have to do this at some point. And so now they're basically saying, you can't come here unless you're a Wahhabist, unless you have these extreme points of views. Otherwise, we're going to beat you, kick you, stomp on you. You're going to be subjected to bigotry, hatred. Right? So it's like,
the religion of peace is saying this, Leanne. And let's not forget, apostasy in Saudi Arabia is a crime punishable by death. If you're caught trying to convert anybody to Christianity or anything other than being a Muslim, you are put to death immediately. And Obama's message, you know what? He doesn't mention for a second the 29 innocent victims that are covered with shrapnel wounds because of Rahami's bombs. They're forced to be tolerant. Meanwhile, we have literally people that despise this nation. He's bringing them in by the truckloads. And I just want to point out, I don't know if we touched on the Somali migration. I know Alex talked about it yesterday. 8,600 alone in this fiscal year, which is a record number. They typically resettle in Minnesota. 99.6% are, of course, Muslim males between the ages of 14 and 50. So we're talking about a militant male population, and they're gunning for this country. But the 29 people covered with shrapnel, you guys need to learn how to be tolerant and just accept it, or you're a racist bigot and you don't understand the fact that, there's more than one culture than yours, frankly.
Right. Well, and actually that was one of the angles that a local paper there, right after the stabbing happened at the mall, the thing was, well, is this due to anti-refugee sentiment? They've been dealing with this for a long time, basically making excuses for someone going out and slashing people in a mall. And if you look on my Twitter, I'm sorry about it, but I tweeted out some of those photos of these people that have these massive gashes in their body. And we're being told by Clinton and Obama, as this is happening, as they're getting their wounds sewn up, those gashes, that we need to be tolerant. And that's the big issue, is that we're not being tolerant enough.
Correct. And, let's just not forget all of the knife wounds and stabbings and murders that are covered up, that are actually a form of terrorism. They try to paint them as either lone wolves. They never actually call it what it is. But take comfort in the fact this was Obama's last speech before the United Nations as President of the United States, and his last failed attempt to push these lame policies, the same old tired rhetoric. He's not winning the war. As Hillary Clinton pointed out, there is an information war and they're losing it. And this just highlights that for me beautifully. He's such a little peon. Forgive me, Leanne. This really upsets me what he's trying to do to this country, because I know your love for this nation. I know that we love this country. Our hearts are really for you. And it infuriates me to see him try to destroy it and kick it on his way out. You mentioned that 110,000 on his last day of office, his last 6 weeks. He's trying to ram through as much as he can to destabilize and create chaos in our societies. But guess what? We're awake now. People are waking up to this. And, nothing new, as you pointed out, the same old rhetoric.
Right. And of course, snubs his nose at Congress once again, refusing to go to the statutorily required meeting about this whole refugee program that he's putting in place, trying to shove through the door at the last minute. Good sign, though, Angela Merkel has actually signaled that she's going to be backing down from her open-door refugee policy. They had a disastrous Berlin election. It was a total disaster there. She's saying, if I could go back in time, I'd rather be better prepared for the refugee crisis. She says she's never going to use her slogan again of, sounds a lot like Hillary Clinton's Stronger Together. So it's a huge failure, and it's going to be a huge failure for Hillary Clinton and Obama as well. Thank you so much, Margaret. And thank you all for tuning into the show tonight. We will see you here again tomorrow, 7 p.m. Central.
Joe Biggs here with Infowars.com. Join us for our live coverage of the upcoming debate between Donald J. Trump and Hillary Clinton on September 26th. Go to Infowars.com/show for all the live coverage, and also go to the Alex Jones channel on YouTube. Will Hillary wear an earpiece? Will Donald Trump and Hillary actually be on the same stage? Or will they try to do another forum like we've seen before? This is all going to be leading up to our 48-hour long coverage on November 8th of the election between Hillary Clinton and Donald Trump and the future of America. Make sure you spread this like wildfire, because we need to get patriots all over the country aligned and ready to stand up and make the changes we need done by voting and getting someone in who will actually take America back and make America great again. This has been Joe Biggs with Infowars.com.